Clapperboard the King Who Lost His Crown Full Cinematic Story, Numbered Scenes 1. The Golden Kingdom in the ancient land of Arvania, surrounded by mountains and shining rivers, stood a magnificent palace made of white marble and gold. Flags waved proudly above its towers. Soldiers guarded its gates with sharp spears and polished armor. The center of this grand kingdom ruled King Armin. Powerful, wealthy, and feared, he sat upon his golden throne, wearing a crown covered in diamonds and rubies. His red royal cape flowed behind him like fire. Courtiers bowed low when he entered. No one dared to question him. The people admired his strength, but they feared his temper. King Armin believed one thing above all: power is everything. 2. A king of pride every morning. The royal court gathered beneath tall, stained glass windows. Advisors brought reports from villages, markets, and farms, but King Armin rarely listened fully. When a poor farmer once tried to speak about rising taxes, the king dismissed him with a wave of his hand. "A king does not answer to peasants," he said firmly. His heart had grown distant from his people. The palace walls were high, and so was his pride. Point 3. The silent sky. Then came the year of silence. Clouds disappeared. Rain stopped falling. Rivers began to shrink. Wells dried slowly. Crops withered under the burning sun. Fields that once shone green turned brown and cracked. In the markets, baskets were empty. Mothers struggled to feed their children. Hunger crept quietly through every village. Yet inside the palace, banquets continued. Music played. Candles glowed. The king did not yet see the suffering beyond his walls. Point 4. The warning. One afternoon, the royal advisors entered the throne hall with worried faces. They bowed deeply. "Your Majesty," the chief advisor said, "the drought grows worse. The people are starving. We must open the royal food stores." The hall fell silent. King Armin's voice echoed coldly. "If we give away the reserves, what remains for the crown?" The advisors exchanged troubled glances, but no one dared argue further. Outside, the sun burned hotter. Point 5. The dying tree. That evening, unable to sleep, King Armin walked alone through his royal garden. The fountains were dry. The flowers drooped. Under a large tree with yellowing leaves sat the old royal gardener, a quiet man who had served the palace for decades. "Why does this tree look weak?" the king demanded. The gardener looked up gently. "Because, Your Majesty, its roots no longer receive water." The king frowned. "Then water it." The gardener's eyes met his. "A tree that forgets its roots cannot survive, and neither can a king." The words lingered in the air long after the king walked away. Point 6. The storm of fate. That very night, dark clouds gathered unexpectedly. Thunder roared across the sky. Lightning split the heavens. Rain poured violently over the palace towers. Inside, servants rushed in panic. Windows slammed shut as King Armin hurried down the marble staircase. His foot slipped on the wet floor. He fell hard. His golden crown flew from his head, rolling down the long hallway, disappearing into the shadows. Everything went black. Point 7. The stranger. When the king opened his eyes, he was no longer in his palace. He lay inside a small wooden hut that a poor family stood nearby. A mother, a father, and 2 children. They had found him unconscious near the gates during the storm. They did not recognize him without his royal robes. The mother handed him a small piece of bread. "The last they had." "Eat," she said kindly. The king stared at the bread. "You give this to me?" he asked weakly. The father smiled. "In hard times, we share." For the first time, the king felt something unfamiliar. Shame. Point 8. The awakening. That night, the king could not sleep. He watched the small family huddled together for warmth. Their clothes were worn. Their roof leaked. Yet they had shared everything. He remembered his words in the throne room. "If we give away the reserves, what remains for the crown?" Now he understood. Without the people, there is no crown. Tears filled his eyes, not from pain, but from realization. His pride had blinded him. Point 9. The return. At sunrise, palace guards found their missing king. He returned quietly. Servants rushed to place the golden crown back upon his head. But something had changed in his eyes. He entered the throne hall and gave his first true command. opened the royal food stores. The court gasped, send grain to every village, build wells, lower the taxes. No family shall sleep hungry again. The advisors looked at one another, astonished but hopeful. Point 10. A different king. Weeks passed. Food reached the starving. Water flowed once more from newly dug wells. Farmers began planting again. The king traveled beyond the palace for the first time in years. He walked among villagers. He listened to their concerns. Children no longer hid when he approached. They smiled. The palace gates remained open. Point 11. The true crown. Years later, Arvania flourished again. Fields were green. Markets were lively. Laughter filled the streets. King Armand stood upon his balcony. Looking at his people below, he touched his crown gently, then removed it. Holding it in his hands, he whispered, "A crown of gold is heavy, but a crown of love is light." From that day forward, he ruled not through fear, but through compassion, and his name became legend, not as the strongest king, but as the wisest.